Thank you for joining the Resilient Cyber Show. My name is Chris Hughes, along with my co-host, Dr. Nikki Robinson.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're joined by Maril Vernon. Maril, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Definitely. We're excited to have you on. For folks that haven't come across you already online in some capacity, do you mind telling us a bit about your background?
Absolutely. So I've been working in InfoSec for about 3 years. I'm kind of known as the chick who got started by getting her Sec Plus in like 2 weeks. Still one of the only cyber certifications that I hold. I recently completed my master's in cybersecurity, and for pretty much my whole career, I was immediately a pen tester moving into red teaming. But that entire time, I had a focus on purple teaming, which is what I do now. Now I build dedicated purple teams.
Awesome. You kind of took us right into my first question for you. When it comes to purple teaming, a lot of folks, it seems to be a lot of confusion around the term, the topic, the concept, so what is a purple team and what is it not?
Okay, so what purple teaming is not is it's not basically an extension of pen testing. Everyone just asks, so are you basically another pen testing team? And I tell them, no, we're not. In the natural evolution of how security testing should go, you'll typically go from like a vulnerability assessment into usually a pen test. And the difference between those is that the vulnerability assessment will say, we think all these bugs could be bad. The pen test will say, we'll prove that this is bad. We'll take it to the exploit or post-exploit activity. And then they give you a big report with all your findings. What a purple team does is takes those exact same offensive activities or like attack chain, and it repeats them. My favorite way, not the only way, is in a collaborative environment with both members from the incident response, detection engineering, and SOC investigative side of the teams, as well as the offensive teams. And we mitigate those things in real time. So my favorite definition for purple teaming is to collaboratively, actively improve security in real time. So measurably move the needle. That's at its core what a purple team should do.
Yeah, I love the description and the concept behind purple teaming, because it really starts to break down, I think, some of those silos that we have sometimes, even within cybersecurity, right? Like sometimes we have like a red team and a blue team and, threat intelligence and IR, and they end up being sometimes separate teams and not actually working together. So do you feel like this purple teaming concept it might be more adopted in the industry? Because I know I've seen more and more in the last couple of years, but do you think we'll see more in the industry, or do you think that some teams are going to, like red teams and blue teams, might hold more on to, sort of what they do?
No, I really do think this is the way of the future. In fact, myself and several of the folks working at SANS are purporting a new maturity model where you don't go from, vulnerability assessment, pen testing, right into red teaming, adversarial emulation, and then go into purple teaming. You do purple teaming as the in-between step. Like, let's really make sure the defenses are functioning as intended. Let's mitigate all the things that we can actively mitigate. And then let's let really sophisticated red teamers design a big, beautiful CTI-influenced, attack path and come out the system and really do their job. Sometimes I think that's sprinting before you crawl if you just go right to adversarial emulation. And ironically, the week after I started this position I'm in now, where I'm a purple team program manager, I saw about 3 or 4 other purple teams pop up and people saying, I wish you told me, we're looking to start a purple team. And I'm like, I had no idea this was becoming a thing, like dedicated purple teams everywhere. So I really think that we're going to see an industry shift. And this makes the most sense, especially for that sweet spot of startups and small to medium-sized businesses, because they usually don't have the budget for big dedicated offensive teams, or they outsource that. And this is a really great way for them to fine tune everything before they get to that step and waste all that money on a non-value added offensive test.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to follow up with that, digging a little deeper. Like, I've seen personally, like people tend to conflate like pen testing, red teaming, and purple teaming. How do you go about when you're speaking to, maybe non-security folks, right? Like maybe more business leadership and such. How do you go about trying to clear that up and just help them understand who's doing what and what those swim lanes are?
I kind of tell them that, as a red teamer, what would you come to me for? You would come to me for what deliverables would you expect? And they tell me, I expect a report, I expect these things. Then I go, great. When you want my metrics and you say how many of your findings like are persisting op to op, or how many of these things have been mitigated or closed, I'm like, I don't know. I have no visibility. I don't control any part of the vulnerability management lifecycle. Who would you go to for that? And they'll say, I guess this guy over here. And I'm like, great. What if there was one team you could come to and say, what were the findings from the offensive testing? How did you mitigate them? How many new detections or new blocks or new things were confirmed or created? And one person could tell you all of that because I have visibility into all of it. They're like, oh, that would be good. I'm like, that's what purple teams do. You can come to me for that if I work on your purple team. If not, I have to stay in my swim lane. I don't want to step on other people's toes. I can't ask who risk owners are and who's the person handling that ticket. That's not my AOR. So it's limiting. So I think that's really the sweet spot where purple teams provide a lot of value to business managers. And then I say, I can take that a step further now because I'm one of the few offensive operators out there who understands business risk. So I know how to take the technical things that I'm doing, the IT findings, and turn them into dollars or risk or attack surface reduce, tie it into GRC, tie it into things that they understand, like cyber insurance and due diligence. And, were you operating in a negligent manner when you were breached? No, we weren't. We can prove it. And, and I can help ease all those minds because I can translate it to business speak.
Yeah, to pull that out a little bit more, because really what you're talking about is like bringing teams together, helping to speak the same language. And I think part of that idea, that concept of this iterative process, this way that you can communicate between teams and sort of help create this, like, hey, we found something, did we fix it? We found something, did we fix it? This sort of way of doing things. But I see the benefits of using that in other ways too. Do you feel like there should be more sort of continuous flow between teams, between cyber teams and IT teams and developers? And do you feel like there might be more value information-wise one direction or the other, or is it somewhat matched?
No, I kind of think that we're entering a phase of security mindset where it's kind of like a DevSecOps model, but for the whole org, right? So like everyone understands the role they have to play in security. You see BISOs popping up everywhere, which is Business Information Security Officer. So like the person in that department who's responsible for the InfoSec piece that department plays. Even if they're totally a business function, they still generally have one. And I think that, purple teaming, red teaming, blue teaming, all these things should play into a continuous feedback loop on each other. And there are actually other like teams in the cybersecurity rainbow, like the yellow teams, which are like the security folks who are the developers and the infrastructure folks and things like that. And when you start combining the yellow with the red, you get orange. When you combine the yellow with the blue, you get green. Green and orange teams are actually their own collaborative functions. So I think just the more we break down, like I loved this initially when I first started pen testing, like I went right to purple teaming because I'm like, why do we do this way? Why do I do my bit over here and you do your bit over there and we just don't talk about it, even though we're essentially working in the same effort? I'm like, I don't want to be that no person. I don't want to be the security person who's just going to come in and tell you how bad your system is and how horrible you are at your job. And I don't want to be the no person who's like, you can't have that because it's not secure. I want to be a person to the rest of my org. I don't want to be the scary red teamer, like who's just poning the system real good every single op. It's not good for morale. It's not good for metrics. It's not good for security success. So I think that this is really the way. And I think we're going to see a lot more collaborations between developers, between ISOs, between BISOs and security folks. And eventually we'll all start working in a feedback loop together, and you won't be looping in the pen test team 2 weeks before go live. Find all the things and give us time to fix them. I'm like, in 2 weeks? No way, that's not going to happen. We'll be looped in much sooner. You won't spend as much money going back and trying to fix security issues because they'll be baked in from the beginning. Like one of the things people say is like, you're a developer, your job is just to make it work. I'm a security person, my job is to make it secure. But I'm like, but what if they had some cognizance and I had some cognizance of their workflow and I wasn't just toting a bunch of things that are unrealistic, and they kind of were aware of that stuff as they were writing the code, and we didn't have a ton of work to go back and do. Now we're saving business dollars and manpower hours as well. It's just a beautiful thing. It will be a beautiful thing when it's all working in security utopia, but I do think we'll see a shift towards many, many, many more collaborative functions outside of proper purple teaming.
Yeah, a few things you said that jumped out to me is I love the idea of breaking down the silos, and you use the DevSecOps analogy, which makes a lot of sense to me, bringing all these teams together. Speaking from the security perspective, just within like the security team or, program within an organization or whatever the case is, how do you go about approaching like, this kind of new model without people feeling like it's punitive? You're going to discover something that's going to make them look bad, or, find something that's going to be embarrassing, or some of that, vulnerability that, looks like they're not doing, their due diligence and integrating security improperly. Like, how do you go about, fostering that relationship and having that collaboration without like them thinking of it in a negative sense?
It's really easy. And a lot of people are like, wow, is it really that easy? But I'm like, all I do is I go to them and I start talking to them like a human. I'm like, hey, Jeff, how's it going? Like, I see you work on this team. I'm new to this team. And I just, I think we have an op coming up soon where we're going to be punctuating some things that you work with, wondering, do you have any concerns? Is anyone not listening to you? Like, I think this is a big issue and they won't listen to me. I'm like, we're happy to punctuate that for you and then get some attention on it and get you a solution, get you a new tool, get you whatever will make your job easier. If you have any more of these bugs or issues, please bring them to me. I'm happy to be on your side. And like and also you let them understand how you're not perfect. Like just because the red team pulls off a perfect objective doesn't mean there wasn't a ton of pivoting and flex happening and like that payload didn't work and they burned our infrastructure, backup infrastructure. And so purple teaming is so great because we execute these exercises collaboratively. So they get to see you flounder. They get to see your stuff not work right away. They get to see how you try and fix it and fix permissions and fix callbacks and injections. And it lets them see like, oh, they didn't just walk right in and light the place on fire. It was some work and it almost didn't work. And they got very lucky. And, we're happy. I'm happy / not happy whenever my objectives actually work. You want to have a negative test all the time. But, it helps to let them see that you're a person and you're just trying to do your job and you're all on the same side. And I'm like, it doesn't just have to be, let me F up your system really well. It can be, let me help you punctuate some gaps and identify some issues and get management's attention on it. And I will prove to them how bad it can be. You no longer have to say, do you know how bad this is? I will show them how bad it is. And then your argument will have some weight and then they'll start listening to you more. And now we're all working together. So it's really just having conversations, having coffee chats with people, talking about our work together, complaining to each other, and honestly just bonding as people. And then when you need to bond over work or when you do have an issue, it's not, well, you're coming at me. It's, I talk to Maril all the time. She doesn't just come to me when there's a problem. We're actually like work friends. We actually understand each other. And I'm like, help me write this intelligently. Help me recommend a remediation that's realistic for you, that doesn't require you going back through 10 million lines of code. That's never going to happen. Like, I don't want to write something that's never going to happen. And I don't want you to do something that's impossible for you to do. So help me help you. And they're like, yeah, I love to complain. Let me help you help.
Yes. Well, I wanted to touch on that because this is one of those things that Chris and I have talked about. And it's something that I'm hearing more and more people sort of speaking about. Cybersecurity is absolutely a technical field, right? Like you have to have some technical understanding, at least in some components, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is relationship building. This idea that whether you're working with other people in security or working with operations and engineering groups or developers or your executive management, a lot of it is around relationship building and being able to effectively communicate, right? And I think that's really what you're digging at, is that you can talk to someone like they're just a person. And then also like, hey, by the way, we can also work together on this. It's not, here's your 300-page report of requirements that you must adhere to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then see you later. Good luck. You have 30 days. But it's really about building relationships and saying, let's come up with a solution instead of, you have to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm curious if you had any specific tips for other people who are thinking about getting purple teams or thinking about relationship building within other teams. Do you have any tips for how to sort of navigate that when you're trying to build up those relationships?
Yeah, I'm never afraid to be the stupid person in the room. I got over that very early in my career, thank goodness. And so I will literally just like take the humble, hi, new here, first time caller approach and be like, can you tell me how this works here? I know how I would do it, but I don't necessarily think that might work. How have you, they're like, yeah, we've all talked about how this would work. Like we've all come up with several ideas. And I'm like, great, I'd love to incorporate those. So I just literally, hi, can I ask stupid questions? Hi, can I bug you? I'm trying to figure out my way. I'm trying to orient myself. I'd rather hear from people who already work here. Like, let them be the experts in the org where they've already worked for a long time and they know those processes and flows and you don't. And just, it's so hard for people who are like badass at their job to be humble and like, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want them to think the new red teamer doesn't know what they're doing. And I'm like, that's not what they think at all. What they think is that you have some humility and some, interpersonal ability about you, and that you're willing to just come to them and solicit their advice, which I think is always going to be beneficial. It really doesn't take that much communication finesse, but I will say that like, no matter how much you try to build those bridges, some people do not want them built. We encountered that very recently, me and my team. No matter how much you want to collaborate and build a bridge and work together, some people are going to say, no, that's not going to work for us. We do things the way we do them. We've always done them this way and we're not going to change. Change your ways or we can't work together. And you go, you know what? Okay, great. We'll take that. Try to be as diplomatic as possible. We'll take that. We'll strategize. We'll see what we can come up with. At the end of the day, though, stick up for yourself and say, I'm not going to abandon everything that I stand for. We think our methodology is good. It's well-researched. It's well-informed. We're happy to find a way to make them work together if it's possible. But if not, we'll try to impact your flow as little as possible while we accomplish our goals as well. It's just about being able to have those contentious conversations in a productive manner, being able to manage multiple personalities. There's great courses on places like Pluralsight about all these soft skill things. But just know that no matter how much you want to collaborate, not everyone will be open to it. And that's okay too. You kind of have to change one mind at a time as a security person.
Yeah, I love where you're going with the kind of dichotomy of willing to be wrong and show humility, but also stand up when you are right and you've done your due diligence and you've done your research, and just navigating that is a really delicate art that some people can't get past not knowing everything or not seeming like they know everything. And for me personally, like I just approach it like I want to win. I want the organization to win. So I don't care if I'm wrong. I just want to get it right and win and like move forward and be successful. So you learn so much more with that methodology or that approach, in my opinion. And you touched on a lot, like the interpersonal aspect of things in your dialogue there with Nikki. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about is like you're really good at personal branding. You're someone I followed on LinkedIn, and I think you've done an excellent job of building a personal brand and interacting with people, and building a profile on there. What made you pursue that avenue of using LinkedIn in that manner? And then any advice for others that are trying to build a personal brand and be more vocal and engage with the community, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I originally did it because honestly, I had no choice. So when I first started in InfoSec, I was like, I basically had a title in the Guard, but I had no actual training. And I was like, so I want to I want to be in a field where you don't just get invites. They don't just hand them out like candy. And I don't know anything about that field on top of this. I don't know anything about I tell people I didn't even know what IP addresses were. So I was like, so I know nothing about this over here, but I know a lot about this because in my former life, I was a social media manager and a copy editor. So I'm like, I might not know a lot about that, but I know how to socialize this really well. So as I go, I'm sure I'm not the only person doing a mid-career transition, learning this for the first time who has an interest. So I was like, you know what? I'm not afraid to be wrong. A lot of people won't post because they're afraid, like, what if I call out the wrong port? What if I say the wrong tool? What if I don't say this right? Someone's like, that's not how you use that. You would use that in this way. So they're just afraid to look stupid to their peers. And I'm like, honestly, I'm just not afraid to look stupid. So as I was learning it, I was just talking about what I was learning, talking about how I was navigating the org and trying to further myself and what I was focusing on learning in order to talk myself into the next position and the next position. And people just related to it. So really personal branding comes down to identifying the audience, identifying their pain point, and then developing a message that addresses that pain point. So you want to keep in mind, why would they follow you for the solution? How are you different? And why should they change now? And I was like, honestly, I chose a very easy audience. If you want to be in cybersecurity and it's not easy to get in here, I'm trying to get in here right now. I somehow talked my way in here right now. This is what I'm learning right now. This is how I'm making myself useful. This is where I'm seeing the most return on investment for my skills. This was not useful to me at all. This was highly useful to me. And I just started, one of the things I'm good at is being gregarious and very open and talking live, talking on my channel. And a lot of people won't even do that. They'll post on LinkedIn every day, but they won't go live on their LinkedIn, or they're afraid to post a video of themselves on their LinkedIn. And honestly, people love that part. They want to get to know you. They want to be your friend. People don't necessarily buy products. They buy people. They buy things that people they admire are into, because they're like, if you're into it and we're aligned in that way, then I might be into it. I might find benefit. I might find value. So personal branding, and I have lots of talks out there about this, really comes down to those marketing basics. But I highly recommend that anyone trying to get into this field build a personal brand, because it used to be it's not what you know, it's who knows you, or it's who you know. Now it's who knows you. Who knows you and what do they know about you? Anyone who comes to my LinkedIn knows what my brand is about, knows that I'm very outspoken, very enthusiastic, but also that I'm just going to give you the unbridled value. I'm not here to keep secrets. I will tell you exactly how I did it. And if you can do it better and faster than me, then I'm going to tell the whole world how you did it. And that's my brand. So building a brand has been infinitely valuable to me. I literally don't have to apply for jobs. I literally don't have to interview with, as bad as that sounds. I'm not saying I don't have to interview, but people just come to me and they just want to know that I know what I'm talking about, and they see that I know what I'm talking about because I'm making my platform my own. And then once they're reassured in my ability to do that, and I'm a good culture fit, it's pretty much like, will you come help us? Like, will you come work for us? I'm like, I'll help you on this project if I can. If I'm not the best fit though, I will find you someone who is. So build yourself a brand and tote your own accomplishments, please.
Yeah, several kind of threads that you touched on there that stood out to me is just like, and this is in your previous, answers to questions too, is like just being human, being transparent, being like relatable, is like something that can go so far. I think when building your personal brand, everything on social media is really polished and perfect, and everyone's just amazing. But
Yeah.
being real and transparent, like showing your failures, your struggles, your shortcomings, I think people relate to that much more, and it resonates with them much more. And I also think that you highlighted, the career transition thing. We talk about the cybersecurity workforce shortage and things like that all the time. But you just kind of emphasize like how someone making a career transition from another career field can bring those attributes and assets and things they've learned in another career field to bear in cybersecurity, and maybe bring those as a strength that maybe some in cyber who are super technical, for example, and they've been in cyber a long time, but they're not very well and not very good at communicating, or, those kind of things, building relationships, building rapport. So it's an example, I think, of like how a career transition can go super well if you have someone who's willing to learn cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, to touch on what you said, Chris, that's one of the reasons I love your content so much, is like, you're a co-founder, you're obviously doing really well. You could do nothing but like super polished, super technical posts, and like, but you show your personal side, you show going to your kids' soccer games, you show how you're a person. And like, at the end of the day, we all put our pants on one leg at a time, right? Like, no matter how much you accomplish, you're still a person. So we always in marketing say, make your mess your message, because that's what people will relate to. Everyone's a mess. No one is perfect. And if they're trying to attain perfection, your brand is going to be unrelatable straight off the bat.
Yeah, I think that's it's such an important message. And I know I've mentioned this before too on some of our other like talks, but I had that initial struggle when I was getting on LinkedIn, because I'm like not a social media person, and I had that struggle getting started. Like, oh, I'm worried about how people are going to feel and things like that. And I love your advice for just sort of getting started and just sort of giving it a chance, right? Because I think what your message is very powerful. It's just sort of putting yourself out there, saying, hey, I'm learning this thing, but also I know this other thing, and come and check me out, right? Like, I think that's the best sort of best advertisement for yourself, right? I'm curious too, based on sort of what you've been doing with purple teaming and sort of with social media and everything, do you feel like, do you have any other maybe resources or references for anybody who's trying to either get involved in purple teaming or even in their personal brand side to sort of get going?
Yeah. If you're totally new to purple teaming, or you've heard it dropped and you're concerned that it's coming for you because your managers have hinted at it, the purple team roundup we did with Wild West Hack and Fest last year was really great. There's a lot of like 101 pioneering a program, basic tools you can use to get started, several ways to organize your team and run your exercise talks. Additionally, I did a webcast with the good folks from Scythe and PlexTrack recently. So Dan DeClaus and George Orchiles. And we did basically a whole how to take it from pen testing all the way through purple teaming up to adversarial emulation in a practical way. We list a lot of tools. If you're a one-person show like I was, if you have a department at your disposal because you're lucky, we go over a lot of the strategies and the things you can do right away to get started. And once you get started and you're proving value, all you have to do is prove value with like 2 to 3 exercises. And then your management should see that this is proving valuable to them. And they should want to back you more to do more of them, and maybe give you a tool, give you a budget, give you a resource, give you more time to dedicate to these, make them more researched, beef them up, include more attack activities in it versus like a handful of TTPs. So we have a lot of that information out there already. A lot of it's pinned on my Twitter. If you can't find the links, absolutely, please hit me up in a DM because I have them at the ready. But there's tons of getting started resources out there. And if you're stuck, or if you're doing it and you're like, I've surpassed all that, what else can I do? Hit me up. Let's brainstorm. We have a regular purple team meetup as well with some of the folks from me and Meta and Splunk and NVIDIA and other places where we are, if you're actively enterprise purple teaming, we're exchanging ideas and bouncing things off each other and talking about tools and approaches that we take. So we're happy to help you further and mature your own program as well.
Yeah, I think that community aspect of bringing all those practitioners together in different industries and organizations is really powerful, and probably can learn a lot, by taking that approach. We did have one question come in that I wanted to ask you about. I'm going to, spin it a little bit, but there was a question about, they have some friends and acquaintances who have, degrees in cybersecurity, and they're looking to get in the career field, it seems, and they're asking, like, is it a shortage of adequate people or people, period? And then, like, my little spin on it is, what is your perspective on our kind of workforce practices and hiring practices right now in terms of certifications, degrees, years of experience? Like, what are your thoughts on that, and how we, maybe some potential changes to allow the right people into the career field, but obviously, like, still keep, the right quality entrance as well?
I was going to try and avoid this soapbox because it's one of my favorites. But I think, there's a two-way issue. The main issues are that employers have unrealistic ideas of what they're asking for. One time when I was an IT recruiter, said they wanted a Pega developer or Pegasus developer with 5 years of experience. And I'm like, do you know why you're never going to find that? And they're like, why? I'm like, because this language has been around for 3 years. Good luck, though. Like, they don't even educate themselves. So I think that we need to have a perspective shift on exactly what an entry-level cyber professional looks like, and the mid-level and the senior levels. As far as certifications, they're great for getting past the HR gatekeeper, if you will, who also has no idea really what they're looking at or talking about. But mostly, again, let's say you don't have a Sec Plus, but you know everything that goes into the Sec Plus. Just start talking about it. Start saying, this is my philosophy on security. This is how I'm implementing this thing. This is how I implemented it at home. This is what we're talking about at work. This is how I would like to see this happen in the industry. And all of a sudden, instead of needing to prove to me that you had a Sec Plus, you are already showing me that you know how to practically implement those things, because certifications, like, knowledge doesn't translate to skills, is what cyber professionals need to understand. You can have a dozen certifications, and then when I sit you on the job and I'm like, can you look up this thing and run this tool? And people are like, what? And I'm like, oh, they didn't go over any of that with you? They're like, no. I'm like, great, we're going to start from square one then. So it's not that you're not a smart individual. It's not that you can't keep up with the material. It's just that you haven't been exposed to these practical skills. So, I mean, I always say, if something intimidates you, make it your best friend until you make it your bitch. So I'm not sure if we can cuss on your show. So I always just say, don't be afraid to look under the rug. Acknowledge a skill that intimidates you, or that you're not good at, or that you're weak in, and really develop yourself in that skill until you know it backwards, forwards, inside out. So I think people who are trying to break into this field, you might have a degree, you might have a ton of knowledge, but we don't know that about you, and we don't know how you would actively translate that. You might have taken a GRC class, you might have taken a class where you had to write like some kind of risk model framework report, but we want to see how you would implement that in a real organization. Like, tell people how you can use your skills to solve a problem. They're generally hiring you to help with one project. One thing is really giving them a lot of pain. Like, we need another person on this project. We need another person to help write reports. We need another person to offload this from our people who are overloaded. Tell them how you can perform that job, and then say, not only that, when I'm done kicking that job's ass, then I'm going to take on more responsibility, and you can get even more value out of me for the money you already pay me. And that's how you're going to get in. I feel so bad for the people who are credentialed up the yin yang and can't get a job. And I'm like, hi, I walked in here and I had nothing but a Sec Plus, and I talked my way into 3 red teaming jobs. But I mean, that just kind of goes to show you that, like, it doesn't always come down to the certifications you have. It comes into how you can showcase the value that you bring to the position. All they want to know is, can you do the job? And if not, can you learn to do the job quickly? Like, on the curve of your value break-even point, the point where you're taking value away because you're not really giving any back, and then you start giving value back to the company massively because you don't need as much training. Get to that point as quickly as possible, automate your job, write new processes, tighten that up, and then take more stuff off other people's plates until you're indispensable. And then you need a resource to take stuff off your plate. That's like, and like I said, it's a two-way street. We have unrealistic job expectations. We have people who are super good, but who are too intimidated to talk about it, or they feel the need to water down their skills. They're like, yeah, I kind of know some red teaming, I guess. Like, I kind of know some Kerberos. And I'm like, no, if you know that thing, tell them, listen, this is how I'm going to solve your problem. Pick me or pick someone else, but I think I'm going to do it better.
I love that answer. It's perfect. So we touched on a lot of different things, right? But before we take us out, I want to ask you sort of our standard question, right? And especially from your perspective, the purple teaming perspective and red teaming, what does cyber resilience mean to you?
Ooh, cyber resilience to me is like really one of the ways that we define success. So to me, resilience is your way to absorb something and bounce back from it. Let's not necessarily try to make sure that that bad thing never happens. The bad thing is going to land one way or the other. We've seen it with solar winds. We've seen it time and time again. When the bad thing does land, how well is your program and your processes working as a whole to make sure your organization can prove it did its due diligence? It can bounce back. Its mean time to operate back up again is very, very small. Your data loss is very, very small. You lost maybe 1 day's worth of backups worth of data, minimum impact to your users. But security is not, let's make sure the bad thing never happens. It's let's make sure we can recover. Let's make sure we prove we were operating in a secure manner. And let's make sure that we restore people's trust that we did everything we could, and we're going to continue to do everything we could, but you can't stop a hurricane. It's a natural cause. There's nothing you can do about it. So cyber resilience, defense in depth, not just your firewall, how well is everything else working? How well is all the role-based access and the IAM and your vulnerability management and your offensive testing? Like, don't just build the defenses up and say, we think they're doing their job, we're good, we're just going to trust that it's working how it's supposed to. Acknowledge the thing, have the pen test done, get the report of the ugly findings, fix the things. That's resilience. Ignoring the problem is not resilience. That's my soapbox.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough, Maril, for joining us today. We talked purple teaming, red teaming, personal branding, getting into the industry. I mean, I think we hit quite a bit today. So
everything everyone's mad about right now.
No, no, it's awesome. It's great. So thank you so much for joining us this week, Maril. Thank you everybody who joined, and we'll see you all next week. Have a good one.
Me and for everyone who listened in.